All right, so thank you, everybody. We will get started here. Um, Here is our agenda. So, Josh, did we get any comments this month?
No comments received. And the one thing we're going to work with Shelly's team is, an opportunity to put the BAC meeting up on the slide bar up in front, just to kind of get some more, maybe some more visibility on it. But it's nothing different than we have done before and didn't receive any comments. So Shelly, opportunity for us to take a look at that, maybe get some more just visibility. So we'll look at that for the next meeting, but there were no comments received.
Easy enough, we can do that.
Thank you.
So for the next item, I guess I'll kick it to Brad to discuss vice chair selection.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Brad Wright, and just as we're looking at going into a new year, it's always important for us to have a vice chair also. So in case one person's not around, we can always have continuity for the meeting. So I wanted to open this up to the team for nominations as far as folks that we would like to have considered, and possible vote as well after we identify some folks. So from the folks that we don't have everyone here, but from the folks that we have present, haven't received any notification about folks that are actively interested, but just wanted to pause for a second and open this to the team to see if there's nominations that we'd like to have for members of the committee.
It's a great resume builder, everyone.
I recommend it.
I'm curious from Renu, from your standpoint, or David's standpoint, and Prashant, folks who may not have had a chance to participate in that capacity before, if anybody would be interested.
Not right now, maybe, for me.
Okay, thank you, Renu. And from David or from Prashant?
Not right now for me as well. Sorry, right at this moment.
What's the expected requirements of the role? Just out of curiosity.
So for right now, what it would really entail is providing quarterly reports to the board. That's really the chair's role, but you would be there to kind of support and be included on that. So the time requirement is not very much. Right now, it's just really helping to validate the agenda or those reports, the quarterly reports, if I'm not available, and I would just be kind of discussing things with you one-on-one, kind of in between meetings.
Sure, happy to.
Excellent, thanks for being willing. I guess just open that up to the committee as far as folks who would want to second David as the vice chair, and then kind of open that up to folks who are voting.
This is Tom Quillen. I'll second David, and thank you very much, David.
Thanks, Tom. And those in favor? Can we see it by a show of hands, perhaps, rather than the eye? It's kind of hard to do it that way. Does everybody know how to do that? There we go. Yeah, 1, 2. And Dick, there we go. And then any opposed? All right, carries. David, welcome as the vice chair.
Sounds good. I look forward to it.
Appreciate it. And we can go ahead and turn it back over to Aaron for the time being.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so our next agenda item here is going through the monthly financial report, and I am going to turn it over here to John Irwin, And just as a reintroduction of John, for those of you who may not remember him or have met him yet, he is our capital programs manager. He does most of the financial reporting. I've actually been off the last, well, basically all summer on paternity leave. So very excited for him and to have him back here. So take it away, John. I'll screen share it for you, so you can just tell me when to move it forward.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Good to be back. Happy to be back in these meetings and be able to present the financial information to y'all once Aaron gets that pulled up. Awesome. So this is our September 2021 report. Just a reminder, we're always kind of a month behind. So we're in the October meeting, but we're presenting the September report. So on our executive summary here, we have quite a bit that has changed on the budget perspective. Our overall program reserve plus contingencies decreased by $1 million. We had a lot of contingency drawdowns this month, but our overall program reserve and our program estimate at reserve estimate complete actually went up by $21,000. So that drop on the green line was solely due to project contingencies going down because we actually added additional money to the overall bond budget this month. So looking at the budget perspective, our first note there, the bond program received quite a bit in added revenue this month, $228,000. A large chunk of that, $169,000, was due to SB 1149 reimbursements. So we get those for energy saving measures that we do as part of our, most often our repair and maintenance projects, anything that touches lighting or sometimes HVAC. So we got a large chunk of change back from that program, and those dollars were mostly from our auditorium projects that we have been doing over the last couple of years. And so that money went back into the district-wide facility repair project because that's where the original work was done. It was out of that bucket of money for the auditoriums. And then we also got $59,000 due to ETO reimbursements, which is the Energy Trust of Oregon. So once again, an incentive program that we're able to get funds back from for our projects that we do. And that got split in how it was allocated. $38,000 was from a repair project, the Highland Park HVAC project. So that went back into that pot of money. And then $21,000 was from our major Five Oaks renovation project. And so that went towards the program reserve. So that's where you're seeing that uptick this month in the program reserve. On our second bullet, the district-wide facility repairs budget, that increased by $660,000. Most of that was due more to just kind of a internal budget transfer. We moved the Elmonica repipe, which was an added project that was approved by the school board in, I believe, June. We moved that from added projects into the repair project bucket, which has kind of been a standard practice of ours with these repipe projects. And we're actually going to bundle the Elmonica repipe with the other two added project repipes. One is McKinley, and Aaron, the other is escaping me. If you
Chehalem.
Sorry, what's that?
Chehalem.
Chehalem, that's right. Thank you. So we're gonna bundle all. The plan is to bundle all three of those together and execute them as one project this summer. And then on top of that $500,000 that we transferred into that project, we also received that additional funding that was described in that first bullet point. And then to make all the math work, we had $46,000 that was transferred out of the project into the classroom walls project for some carpet repairs at West TV that's being done as part of that project. And now we kind of get into the contingency draws for the month. So ACMA's contingency decreased by $362,000. Part of that was due to updated costs for completing the Performing Arts Center shed. We're doing some improvements on that part of the building. And so we got some updated costs on that. There were also some smaller HVAC changes to the building And then we had to purchase and install additional intrusion devices around the building. On a positive swing for contingency, Five Oaks is that project, the renovation project, that contingency increased by $74,000. And that was due to, that's due to projected credits as we close out the GC's contract. The credits came about as part of our auditing process. For those of you who have been on the committee for a while, you probably remember that we do financial audits of our alternative procurement projects, so our CMGC and our design build projects. And so we completed our third-party financial audit of the GC's contract for Five Oaks, and we're able to get an additional $74,000 worth of credits out of that. So that was great. Those audits have been really fantastic for us. I think we've gotten money back through all of them up to this point. So it's been a really effective practice for us, and a really great thing for us to carry forward with our projects, because we're seeing great results from it. Mountainside's current contingency decreased by $614,000, and that is due to we finally received bids for the post-warranty period field repair work out there. We talked about this with the committee a couple of times last year. That's where we have the fields we call them the field humps out there on the athletic fields. And so this is to go out and fix those and make sure the athletic fields are level. And so we were happy that we had enough contingency remaining in the project up to this point, that based on those bid results, we'll be able to pay for that out of the remaining contingency in the project and keep that all contained within the Mountainside project and not have to pull funds from anywhere else. And then some of our repair projects here, we had Heighton HVAC's budget increased by $63,000. And that was due to some additional controls work that needed to get done out there. ISB HVAC and roofs budget increased by $165,000. And that was due to some unforeseen conditions. They found quite a bit of dry rot around one of the roof perimeters. And so we need to be able to go in there and repair that. And then kind of a similar situation with Bethany Seismic, that contingency, not a budget increase, but the contingency decreased by $116,000 due to some unforeseen costs that were related to relocating some of the existing ducting in the building.
Hey, John?
Yeah.
A question back on the audit that you described. What kinds of things are they finding? And is there any trend? You say that we're getting money back on most of them. Are there any kind of like things that we're seeing from project to project? Or?
It's really varied, dependent on the project and the contractor. Some of the things, a lot of what our firm looks for is things that are not allowable costs within the contract that just kind of slip through the cracks. So sometimes it could be something like a vehicle rental or purchase of a certain equipment item. Other times it's related to labor hours. There are certain positions and allowances that are allowed within the contract. And if the contractor exceeds the billings for those positions, a lot of times we get credits back from that. Sometimes it is change orders that are submitted and then there's no substantial backup to actually show where the costs were coming from. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag on all the projects. I would say the allowances for positions is a pretty common one that we see on a lot of projects. Like an example might be the contract says that there will be one superintendent on site, but we're getting charged throughout the project for 2 superintendents on site, and there's no change order in place for something like that. So that would probably be the most kind of common thing that we see across all of them.
I would add one of the big ones that we see has to do with how markups are calculated, like for insurance and bonds. There's a pretty prescribed way contractually how you have to calculate those. Like, are you allowed to charge fee on top of a bond markup? The answer would be no, but sometimes those aren't always apparent until you dig into the financial information through the audit. But those on a large project, those add up really quickly just through the order of operations of how you calculate those.
Well, thank you.
I would also just kind of add the funny thing with these is they usually start out very, very large, the amount of credits that exist. And then it's amazing the amount of paperwork that suddenly is found that was never submitted to us that covers a lot of the costs. So usually the auditing firm will submit what they call their issues list, and it's usually quite large. And then the contractor is able to kind of show proof of a lot of the costs, and so those get dwindled down by the time the audit is complete. So if nothing else, even if we weren't getting a lot of savings back like we have, just make sure that we're getting all the proper paperwork from our contractors, and we're getting all the backup we need for our project files. So it's a really valuable practice, I would say.
Good.
All right. So moving down to the schedule perspective, this note we didn't really add anything from last month's report. We're kind of in that in between where we're closing out last summer's projects and ramping up for the next summer. So just the same note here showing some of the great projects that we are looking forward to completing in the upcoming summer, which says summer 2021. I see now that needs to be updated to summer 2022. But yes, this is all projects that will be done in this upcoming summer.
Hey, as I read this, the question occurred to me, maybe you can help. Are all of these things a part of the 2014 bond scope?
They are
Yes.
now. Many of them
Yeah.
added projects.
They were added, Dick. Some were added under program reserve. So like security cameras were added under program reserve when we talked about prioritizing unfunded projects and then getting them on a project list. That's one example. Aaron, and what are the other examples there? The repipe at El Monica is one of them that came from program reserve.
Classroom walls.
Yeah, some of these are the BCA work, the district-wide repair work, but a good chunk of them are additional projects.
Seismic too, Dick. Remember we had a seismic bucket within the program, but there were remaining dollars, and we said we want to continue with seismic projects, and so that's the West TV.
So are all of these additions since 2014 documented so that if somebody were to challenge including this, it could be justified?
Absolutely. It's been part of that, especially additional projects have been part of a process that we have received endorsement from the BAC, and within the cost control management plan for us, the authority to put these new projects in.
Good.
We voted on these in the board too sometimes. So.
And you do, right, Eric? Thank you.
I have a question. So do you see some of these supply chain and labor availability challenges having a cost impact? Or are the costs pretty much locked in?
Yeah, and sort of scroll around like that. Good question. Yeah, I do see it having a cost impact. We're going to get a really good test of that here in the next couple weeks, actually, because we are, you may recall that for this previous summer, we had planned to do a re-roof of Montclair Elementary School. And through the course of buying that out, we found the materials were unavailable until much later than we felt comfortable with. And we couldn't come to a fair agreement with the contractor to delay the work until next summer. So we canceled that contract. We're rebidding it right now for next summer. So what we'll have will be just an apples to apples comparison of the cost to do the work, summer 2021 versus 2022. It'll be pretty interesting. Definitely expect to see increased costs.
That'll be a good data point. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be really good, and it'll give us. It's a good test balloon for us to see how the rest of these roof projects are going to go for next summer.
Thanks.
Yeah, that kind of covers our last two bullet points here under challenges and opportunities. These are also carryovers from the last month's report. But we added under this first one what Aaron was just speaking to a little bit, that due to the issues going on, that there's a potential that some of the projects could even get delayed, not just cost impacts, but schedule impacts. And so we're investigating what those impacts will be like and trying to plan accordingly as we schedule the last projects out of this bond, trying to get everything 100% complete. And then that pretty much, that's the executive summary. Those are all the major changes for this month. And then kind of all the other pages are backup. So
I wanted to add something, John, just about the SB 1149 and ETO for the group. We have a general funded position. He's an energy and resource program manager. His name is Matt Lichtenfels. He's the one that goes out and gets the incentives with the state and works with, Aaron's team and Jeff and John to be able to get these incentives. So it's something that's been a value. I think we're over 4 million when you look at the SB 1149 and the ETO, what's come back to the bond program. So it's a great program. He's a great asset and he works well with the team here. And I just wanted to make that noted for you guys. So just the board got an update about the programs and something that maybe we can dig into a little bit later if we wanted to at another meeting to talk about, but just a lot of great work into the energy programs.
I was just going to ask, there was that last bullet item, John, that you mentioned. It mentioned, I think, labor availability and just it said challenges with regulations changing frequently. I wasn't necessarily tracking those two things kind of being related. Would you be able to speak to that last bullet?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. It has a lot to do, I don't need to go too deep in this, but as a school district, we have the vaccination requirements, and just how that works in the contracting community is different with how it works at the school district. And there's a lot of gray area there in how a lot of different districts interpret those rules differently. And it's a tough, sticky situation. And it has the potential to lead to challenges with labor availability on projects.
Understood. So it's in regard to COVID protocols and such. Got it.
Yeah, exactly.
It'll be interesting to see, because I understand that OSHA is coming out with their vaccine requirements in a couple of weeks. So it's going to be telling.
Yeah, it will be very interesting. Okay, any other questions on the financial report?
No questions from my end.
Okay, cool. I will jump back to the slideshow here and have a couple topics to discuss. Okay, so one of the topics that was requested last time was some lessons learned. Just based on this whole bond, what are some things we've learned and how are we applying those going forward? So I have a couple slides on that, but first I wanted to mention for those of you who haven't been around here for a while, we did sort of go through an effort similar to this in the middle of the bond, and it's this. We produced a plan here. It's called the Cost Management and Control Plan. This is something that's available on the website. This really guides a lot of how we, our whole process actually, specifically for doing added projects or adding budget to projects. There's really sort of a list of rules on how we do that. And it all came from this Cost Management and Control Plan. And this was something that was developed in coordination with the BAC, actually. So definitely encourage you guys to go look at that. I'll try and cover some new ground so we're not rehashing that whole thing, but it's filled with all sorts of good stuff. Some of the main lessons here were around how we do cost estimating, procurement, and scheduling. Actually, three themes that I'm going to cover here in a second. So, okay, number one, project schedules. We need appropriate schedules. This current bond, we did a lot of replacements, all of which went through the swing school, which was Tumwater Middle School was the first school we built. And I'm going to address the elementary schools here first. So each of these schools had 1 year in the swing school to be rebuilt. Honestly, I'm not sure how we could have done it otherwise with extended schedules, but there was a lot of risk associated with it's a very tight schedule. When you consider that you have a year to do the building, you know, it takes a month to do the demolition and everything, at least a month to do the demolition. It takes at least a month to get the building furnished and fixtured and outfitted and all that. And so when you look at actual construction time, you're down to 10, maybe 9 months of construction for a 90,000 facility. Uh-oh, what do we got? Okay, so there's a lot of risk associated with that. And had we not been able to deliver those projects within that time, there really isn't a plan B. You don't have the ability to move an entire school elsewhere for the most part. What it leads to is if there's like challenging existing conditions like soft soils, contaminated soils, or, you know, in fact, we had this happen on just about all the projects, but unanticipated asbestos that just takes a lot longer to demolish. You really don't have any options for remedying the schedule. The only thing you can do is pay the contractor to accelerate the schedule, work swing shifts, work overtime, bring in extra crews. With that tight schedule, it's hard, it's a big risk, and it certainly led to additional cost on those projects. So one of our lessons learned, you know, the lessons learned on schedule here, we applied it to ACMA, and we were able to work with you all and the school board and add a year to the schedule of ACMA. ACMA went really smoothly as a project, and a big part of that had to do with extending the schedule. Particularly, you know, in retrospect, with all of the COVID stuff that happened, I don't think we really could have been able to deliver the project in 1 year.
Aaron, is there,
from Mountainside,
have you done any cost quantifying of how much it costs to have such a compressed schedule as opposed to having in other words, having a 2 year versus a 1 year? There must be some cost impact. You mentioned some examples of doing that. Is there any kind of general number if you were to justify taking 2 years on a project where in the past we've done 1 year?
You know, I would say we don't have an exact number. It's a kind of a hard thing to quantify because a lot of the savings you're talking about come about from acceleration. So I mean, I could look at what we paid to accelerate each of those other projects and compare it, but it's hard to get an exact, accurate number. And I was gonna say Mountainside also. Mountainside at 2 years actually ended up being a little bit less than 2 years, but for such a large facility, that was a huge schedule risk and really only barely squeaked in on time. So as we look to the next bond, potential to replace Beaverton High School, we're gonna start that on a 3-year schedule from the outset. Really should help reduce overall risk associated with the project.
I would recommend that you do some general kind of cost assessment, because I would think that that question might come up from somebody on the board or somebody from outside. That having some sort of a back of the envelope cost impact might help answer a question like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good idea. That's something we'll have to figure out how to do, but I'm sure there's a way.
Anita has her hand raised.
Oh yes, Sunita.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. You said that for Beaverton High School, you're looking at 3-year for completion. What happens to the students in the meantime? Do they go to different schools?
Great question. So specific to Beaverton High School, our plan is to build it as occupied construction. So construction will be taking place on site while students are there. The site layout actually is pretty conducive to it because there's a big field. It's called the Merle Davies Field, and the Merle Davies building up on Farmington. That's likely where we would build the new building. So we would be able to retain the current classroom building while building the new building. And there would be, 3 or 4 different phases to the project. But with a school that size, it's not really feasible to relocate them.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
That's similar to what Lincoln High School in Portland has done.
Yeah, that's correct.
Aaron, can you remind me, we're keeping the cafeteria at Beaverton, is that correct?
Yes, we are keeping the cafeteria and concession stand.
Yeah, definitely the concession stand. Definitely. No doubt about that. But because the cafeteria, I think we're only 10 years old since we built that?
Yeah, it's 12, 15 years old or something like that. Yeah.
So that'll be incorporated as part of the main facility. So it's not a separate facility as it is now.
That has yet to be determined.
Okay.
I certainly expect we'll have at least a covered walkway to it or something. We haven't gotten that far.
All right. Well, noted for the record, you heard my preference. So.
Okay. All right. I'm just going to write down Dick's suggestion here real quick. Okay. All right. Number 2. Whoops. Okay, number 2, more accurate cost estimates. When you look at the current bond, the 2014 bond, and you look at our schedule or our budgets for the projects, you'll see that in pretty much every case, the current budget or estimate to complete, well, I guess they're all complete now. So the final budget for all of the major rebuild projects is higher than the original bond budget. And many reasons for that, and in a lot of cases it's specific to the projects, but generally speaking, we didn't have enough due diligence prior to the bond, or we didn't have confirmation through getting multiple cost estimates. So we did have cost estimates for those projects. The problem was the cost estimates were based on very, very, very high level information and really didn't capture the full scope of the project. So as we dug into those projects and developed them, the cost estimates went up and exceeded the budgets. So as we look to the next bond, we're doing it right now, but we really want to make sure we have good cost estimates. We have multiple cost estimates, independent ones. As a matter of fact, for Beaverton High School right now, we have a cost estimator working for us. There's a cost estimator working for our architect, and we also have a contractor on board who will do their own cost estimate. So, you know, when we're throwing out a number like 230 million, I think is the current number on the bond list, we really want to make sure that that number is solid and we're able to deliver the project for that.
Aaron, this is Brad. I was going to say, is that method that you're using for it, is that because you're using alternative project delivery methods? Are you using CMGC or design build for Beaverton as an example?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but I would almost certainly you will use CMGC for Beaverton High School. The project is such a large project. There's nobody that would do anything other than CMGC. There's not many hard bidding $200 million projects.
Understood. So you're bringing the contractor in for pre-construction services earlier to help out to define that scope.
Yes, ultimately, the contractor working on the project right now has not gone through that process. They're working for the architect as sort of a constructability review and estimate. So the two aren't they aren't aligned necessarily. We will go out and we will follow all the appropriate steps to solicit CMGC once we pass the bond. But we'll probably do that really quickly after the bond's passed.
Hey, Aaron, this is Prashant here.
Yeah.
How are we addressing the market condition? I mean, what we are experiencing, that like the material scarcity and escalation this year, which probably will continue into next year as well. Are we adjusting our contingency or having some sort of a factor moving forward?
Yes, definitely. Yep, we apply cost estimators get pretty creative and conservative in how they approach that. So there will be contingencies, there will be market conditions and escalation all applied to the estimate for the projects. It is, you know, it's tough to know exactly how it will look, but you know, for instance, we hire RLB, Ryder Love Bucknell, to do our estimates, and they've got a pretty good pulse. They're like a global company, and they do market research, so they have a pretty good idea of what sort of escalation we're seeing.
And Aaron, just a confirmation, is the school district estimating to the midpoint of construction?
Yes.
Hey, Brad, the one thing I wanted to comment on is, you know, thinking about like federal large programs like military construction, MILCON projects. This would be like the PD, project development part of it that we're doing. And it's kudos to Aaron and the team for like leaning forward to saying we need to get that level of detail and better cost estimating so that we have a good package together. We're going to talk about the next bond at the end of the agenda here today, and look for the committee's help for some of those conversations. So that's a topic at the end that I'll touch on.
Okay, so item number 3. This has to do with our planning cycle, sort of internally within my department, on how we plan and execute projects. Kind of the way it's always been since I've been here, as we start planning a project, you know, sort of in the summer, you're doing design work through the fall, and then you're bidding in, you know, in winter, early spring, and then you're executing the project that following summer. So it's almost a 1-year cycle for projects. And what we're finding out right now is that that's just not enough time. There's just things have slowed down with the material shortages and things. We can't get materials in time to do these projects. So one of our lessons learned here is to adjust our planning cycle for these projects to to be designing projects 2 years out instead of 1 year out. This will give us more flexibility. It'll help us be more reactive to market conditions and available materials. Also helps with permitting in a lot of cases too. Many times we find we're up against the wall for permits, and that really is not necessary. So by switching to a 2-year cycle, I think we will be in much better position. Which means I'll add that for 1 year, we're kind of doubling our design workload. So we're doing that right now. We're ramping up to do this right now. It's a good year for it since we don't actually have a ton of projects next year, relatively speaking. So we're trying to get ahead of it now. Okay, number 4. This is also something we've already started doing, and I think you will all appreciate here. But project selection with life cycles in mind. So my example here is Raleigh Hills. In the 2014 bond, we had a project to do a remodel and like extension at Raleigh Hills. However, when you look at the facility in the context of its overall life cycle and conditions assessment information we have, it made no sense to remodel the building. Really, that project never should have. It should have been conceived as a replacement instead of as a partial remodel. So as we look to the future, we want to be making sure that we're planning out projects for buildings with their total life cycle in mind. Like, we don't want to be replacing the roof of a project that we're about to replace. It's not responsible to do that. And, in the past we didn't have all the information to be able to make those decisions, but now we do with the conditions assessment. So really want to make sure we're utilizing that to the fullest. Number 5, the project risk matrix.
Aaron, on number 4, though. No, Aaron's team has done a great job of making sure that we don't fall into the same situation as we did in number 4 this time. And that is through the McKinstry report in terms of assessment of our facilities throughout the district. So there's been a lot of good work in preparation for this next bond. That had that been in place, Raleigh Hills would not have been selected as just for the upgrades and remodel that were selected for this time around. So again, lessons learned, and Aaron, you started on that work about 4 years ago. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Another example too, if I could add, Aaron, for us right now. So 5 Oaks went through renovation, and now we're having problems with the roof. It's got, it's an old roof, has to be replaced, but that would have been caught kind of up front too in terms of that project planning. So that'll be part of the next bond. But nice new interior finishes, and you've got a leak, small leak in the library that's a nuisance. So something we have to deal with, but this is where the FCA and the McKinstry report will help in our project selection and just having a better list put together leading up to the bond.
And Sunita and Eric, I want to emphasize a small leak.
Very small.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, number 5, project risk assessment matrices. So one thing we found is, the quality of contractor we get on projects varies to some degree, particularly when we're doing hard bid projects, which is mostly what we do. And being familiar with the projects and kind of the same issues that we see come up from year to year, we have started to be a bit more proactive when it comes to how we engage with the contractors, and really to some degree dictating how they execute the projects as far as means and methods. It's not always a good idea to dictate means and methods because you assume some amount of liability there. But on the other hand, we've seen that things that cause issues and risks and damage and so forth. And so we're really working to be more diligent in identifying those risks, project risks, early with the contractor, a collaborative effort to identify and head those off before they become big issues. So I listed a few examples here. Roof leaks, being number one. We actually have become very strict on how we deal with roof leaks with the contractors. It is when we know of when a roof leak presents itself, we're pretty aggressive with them and responding to it and cleaning up. We all remember West TV and having mold issues, and really that's not acceptable for us to have happen. So that we require them to issue or to provide us their moisture mitigation strategies. When they're replacing a roof, we really lean on them to only open up as much roof as they can replace within the same day or the same week if weather looks pretty good. It's a little bit less efficient, but also really reduces our risk as far as leaks go. Long lead items always seems to be an issue. They never showing enough of a sense of urgency in long lead items. So we know what things we see as long lead items and issues, and really push to make sure we get those submittals produced and approved as quickly as possible. And then the last one here, project procurement. So lots of good lessons learned on how we procure our projects. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this, we procure the construction projects in quite a different number of ways. Sort of the standard way is a hard bid. It's just we hire a designer, we produce the drawings, we put them out to bid, and the lowest bid gets the project. That's not always the most effective way to do things, depending on some of the project parameters. We've actually started doing more of a pre-qualified hard bid for a lot of the projects, particularly the larger ones, like VOS. The VOS Classroom Edition, we did a pre-qualified hard bid. So we shortlist, 5 or so general contractors, people who have demonstrated that they meet the qualifications, and then hard bid amongst those. That's proven to be pretty effective. We did that on ACMA and most of the elementary school rebuilds. Generally the larger projects, you wouldn't do it on a smaller project. We also have CMGC projects as an option and design build. We just did a design build this summer, and that was pretty good. We did a CTE project. This isn't a bond project, which is why you guys haven't heard about it, but it's like a manufacturing edition at Westview High School. We did that design build. We did a little mini design competition. That was pretty neat. It was very effective. It worked good. CMGC is a good option too. This is a negotiated project. You're selecting a contractor based on qualifications, and you're working with them to negotiate the cost of work on the project. Already talked about how this is probably what we'll do for Beaverton High School. It's a good method, and it allows us to work with the contractor to do constructability review. It allows them to more closely engage with subcontractors. It's a much more collaborative process. So anything other than hard bid is what's called an alternative procurement. And in Oregon, for us to do alternative procurements, it requires school board approval. So we do like a public hearing, and there's a whole findings report, and then that gets submitted to the school board for approval. So if we think it's a good option, like for Beaverton High School, I will write out the justifications of why I think it's a good option and why it's not going to reduce competition on the project, and submit that for approval to the school board before we solicit that work. Okay. That was a mouthful. I think I covered all the lessons learned though. Any questions from anybody on any of those?
I was just gonna say thanks, Aaron, for passing that along and including the link to the cost management, report, so that we can also kind of dust that off and take a look at that. There's a lot of good information in there on kind of how we've arrived at those kind of process and procedures that everybody kind of put back in place back in 2016 and 17.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll do the next topic, seismic planning. Oh, David needs to leave early. Okay, goodbye, David. Okay, seismic roadmap. So what we've got here is a ORS 455-400, which states, subject to available funding, all seismic rehabilitations or other actions to reduce risk must be completed by January 1st, 2032. So that is a tall order. That's a lot of requirement they're asking there, with the interesting caveat of subject to available funding. So this is a big ticket item to do all of these seismic upgrades. And really, in order to make those work, we need the capital bonds. So we have set up a plan to do all of these, to meet this statute here. Mostly, there's kind of one caveat there that I'll show you when we look at it, but we're really going to try to be mostly compliant with this. And the way we do it is over the next couple of bonds doing seismic upgrades. We've got a lot of great information in some assessments we've done recently. We hired KPFF, and we also work with Holmes Engineering to assess our buildings and then help provide us with retrofit schemes and cost estimates and everything to be able to plan these projects. So we have a number of different strategies on how we're going to accomplish this. We plan to replace, retrofit, decommission, or do nothing. So I will give examples of all of these on the next page. Similar to the lesson learned on full total building life cycle planning, we really want to make sure we're being thoughtful about how we do these projects. There's a lot of efficiency in doing a seismic upgrade at the same time as a roof replacement. A lot of your upgrades end up being sort of under the roofing, and you save a lot of money if you're able to package them together at the same time. So what that means is you're not always doing the worst building first. You're sometimes doing the building that's scheduled for a roof replacement but also needs a seismic upgrade at the same time. That maybe is your first one. But also trying to do it in a way that does reduce the risk the most. So as I said already, the cost and effort to do these upgrades is pretty significant, and it's going to take several bond cycles to complete. So for our roadmap, and for the most part, I'm not identifying specific schools here, although rest assured, I do have that. I mean, we are very specific in our plans that we have internally, but didn't want to get too detailed for the purpose of this meeting. So our first strategy is replacing facilities. This is pretty self-evident, but it would be at a building like Raleigh Hills or Beaverton High School, where they both have significant deficiencies as far as seismic goes. But it's only a piece of the story at those schools, so we know that Beaverton is 100 years old and Raleigh Hills is 90 years old or whatever. These are buildings that are at the end of their functional life, and it would be inappropriate to go and seismically retrofit them. So we will seismically upgrade the school by tearing it down and rebuilding it. There are 10 schools that are in that category right now. Retrofit, 34. This is the majority of our facilities. These are schools that are not so old that they should be torn down and rebuilt. They've still got some functional life left in them, and we really should be looking at how are we going to retrofit these buildings to improve the safety. These are the ones where you're looking to package a seismic upgrade with a roof replacement. Examples are the Park middle schools. So when you look at the assessments and the scores, most of the middle schools are very low scores seismically, but they're also, generally speaking, pretty good facilities. They're in good shape, scored pretty well on the conditions assessment, and really just need to be retrofitted seismically. So our next bond plan, the first priority will be the middle schools. So it's the park middle schools, Cedar Park, Meadow Park, Highland Park. Whitford is also one of the park middle schools, even though, maybe they should have called it Whitford Park. Maybe not. Also, this would include Five Oaks and Mountain View. So those both, they're not the same prototype as the other four, but they're the same era of construction and also in need of the seismic upgrades. So decommission, we have a number of facilities that aren't great replacements for either being replaced or retrofitted. They're really kind of older facilities, also not really suitable for redevelopment. Maybe they're on small sites or they're really just no longer needed due to enrollment or programming changes that are projected. Just a couple of those. And then no action. This is where we want everybody to live. These are the schools that are already in great shape. So all the new buildings are in this category. Some of the pretty recent ones from the past couple bonds, also like Springville or Aloha Huber Park, are all no action. And then of course the ones that we've actually upgraded so far. So that would be Aloha, Beaver Acres, Cooper Mountain. This is where we want them to go. And if you plot this out over some hypothetical bond scenarios, this is what it would look like. So we are effectively right in the middle of this chart right now. Or I guess with the second one, we're after the 2014 bond. So for the purposes of seismic upgrades, we're pretty much done with the projects in this bond. We have a few more that you saw, but those are kind of smaller incremental type projects versus whole building upgrades. So these were the numbers I showed on the last slide. When you look at our hypothetical scenario for a 2022 bond right now, you can see how the numbers are starting to improve. The number of no actions starts to go up quite a bit. This is your, replacing Beaverton, replacing Raleigh Hills, doing the upgrades at the middle schools. It starts to improve those numbers. And then after the subsequent bond, things are looking even better and have most of the schools there up in the no action category. The one caveat to that, which I teased earlier, this last column, the number one there, that would actually be Sunset High School. Sunset High School is too big of an animal for us to tackle in what we have projected for the next bond. So we would look at that probably for replacement in the following bond, be it 2036, I guess, is probably what we're talking about for that project. So that actually is it. Are there any questions on seismic?
I'd just make the comment that I'm impressed with the thought that you're putting into this, because when it was first discussed, it did seem insurmountable, and you cut it into pieces that seem to be doable. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
I was going to say, looking to link that work with the other work that happens to need to be done also from other disciplines. I mean, it's definitely a prudent strategy moving forward. So it's great to see, looking to really kind of maximize the effectiveness of the dollars and then the projects that you're doing as well. The one question I had was really looking at the next bond. I mean, there's a lot to do when it comes to retrofits and then the replacements, but an even bigger hurdle on the 2028 bond. Is that something that you see as being, doable or achievable if to do 23 retrofits in a bond cycle, as well as 5 replacements?
Yeah, Josh asked me the very same question, as a matter of fact. So, that's a very good observation. And the reason I think it is doable is because when you look at the size of the projects, what we're doing is we're doing, in the next bond, we're doing really the worst facilities. So as you start to move down that list, move to the second bond, the projects become much smaller. You're talking about, there's quite a correlation between the age of the facility and the condition seismically, of course. And so as we're working down the list to the ones later and later on, it becomes less and less work. So the cost estimates are going down and the projects are smaller and easier to execute. This is all to some degree conceptual because we don't actually have designs for these things, but based on the high level information in the reports that we have, that's what it shows.
Understood. And you're looking at that in addition with the kind of anticipated useful life of major systems at those buildings as well?
I would say for those projects that it has not gotten that detailed yet. Just looking at the seismic numbers on them.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any other seismic questions?
Aaron, we haven't shared this with the board yet, have we?
We have not, Carl. And that's something that the board chair has asked for. And we wanted to have a conversation here first.
Okay.
With the BAC to get maybe some feedback. And it's, it'll be on agenda in the future with school board to have that conversation.
Yeah. I appreciate that because it's going to be of high interest, especially as we're approaching the next bond. And as you both are aware, a lot of conversation around this with our board chair. So
I have gone over the plan with him before, but not in this cool little chart that I made.
Yeah, I think this helps graphically show it. Like Dick said, you take it in the small bites. And great observation, Brad. The 27 retrofits. That's a lot of work to get put in there. Aaron, I think that's our last slide. If you go to the next one.
I think Sunita has a question real quick.
Oh yes, Sunita.
So when I'm looking at this, you say after 2022 bond, right? That numbers that you have, that's the bond that we are working on, right? We will work on, right?
That's the upcoming bond.
The upcoming bond. And then it doesn't matter which option we take, we'll still end up. So that's
No, that's a great clarification. Yeah,
that's great.
That's only if we do the larger bond.
That's where we need.
I got a response from everybody all of a
We
sudden.
need the 722.
Okay, all right.
We need to be very clear with that. We need 722 as our.
Okay,
plan.
yeah, because that's what I thought. So, but thanks for the clarification. Yeah. Okay.
You woke everyone up on that one.
Okay.
I need to add a little asterisk to this or something.
Yeah, actually, Aaron, it wouldn't be bad that this is dependent upon a $700+ million.
Right.
Yeah,
bond.
for the next 2 bond cycles.
Yeah.
Renu has a question.
Actually, I have a comment. So making predictions about the economy is always a dangerous occupation. But in this case, I think the consequences are likely to be fairly benign. So since these are very long-term projects and our budget is fixed, I think we should clearly telegraph to our customers and others that there is always the possibility that we will be having to drop more projects if costs keep rising in the future, because we don't have the option of passing on costs to our consumers, right? I mean, we are on a fixed budget and this is a very long-term deal. So I think that's something that we should be considering. To clearly telegraph that, yes, this is what we would like to do, but if costs keep rising the way they do, some of these things may drop off our roadmap.
Yeah.
Rena, you're absolutely right. That's always a consequence of when you go forward with a bond, especially a 6 or 8 year bond. Our saving grace on this 2014 were our bond premiums that allowed us to do backfill, where Aaron was talking about the shortfalls early on with the cost estimates on those projects, the high schools and the elementary schools. So that's why Aaron also emphasized the cost estimating. Not only are the architects doing, but we are doing also on our side to shore that up and make sure we've got as good of a number as possible, but also to have a healthy contingency with each project individually.
And yeah, I just want to make the point that interest rates have been falling for 40 years now, and it's unlikely that in the next 8 years they'll continue to fall. I mean, like I said, making predictions about the future is always risky, but in this case, the consequences of being wrong are pretty good for us, actually.
Yes, very good point. I agree. And that's kind of why it's a roadmap too, right? It's a continuum that we're trying to improve on, and we'll get as far as we can with the budgets we have.
Aaron, I have a quick follow-up comment on this.
Sure.
This is a very good representation of what it would look like with the option 2. If you're going to present it to the board, it might be helpful to show what it would be with option 1 as well, so that we have a clear picture. Okay, if we do this, then this is what it would look like.
I like that, Sunita. You're creating a doomsday approach.
It's very helpful, Sunita. Aaron, I apologize. I muted you. I'm like moving all over my screen, so I didn't mean to mute you.
No worries. I figured it was because my computer was screaming or something. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'd love to do it. I love making little charts and whatnot. So I think that's wonderful.
Thanks, Aaron, and sorry for adding the work for you.
No, that's great feedback, Sunita. That's something that would tell a good story in terms of, an option 1 will only get you so much. And if we look at a plan looking ahead, that's a reality we'll have to face as a district if we don't get the support that we need.
And Sunita, I appreciate it because it allows us to provide an unbiased perspective. So we should actually give both profiles on anything.
And also we have that requirement you showed that we need to be by 2032, we need to be having like seismically sound buildings.
Yeah, Aaron, what's the line in that? Because it's squishy at best.
It's an unfunded,
If you have the money.
Unenforceable mandate.
Yeah, if you have the resources.
Okay.
It's squishy.
And I will say that our district is kind of we're a leader in the seismic retrofits in this world of help getting our buildings to where they need to be. Aaron was interviewed here from Seattle news outlet in terms of what we're doing and kind of the work that we've done, and they're looking for ideas and how to get ahead of this, and it's started off great with this bond, and so we want to continue to carry that forward, and this is part of that plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Thanks.
Yes, make sure you look for Aaron in the Seattle Times upcoming.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the story says. Hopefully it's good.
I'm sure it's a front page.
Yeah, I'm sure.
With pictures.
Everybody gets real excited about that. Yeah.
I love infrastructure.
I think Josh, you're gonna take this last page here.
So looking at the calendar, our next meeting is January 26th. So we do have a break, just part of how we worked out our meetings and the battle rhythm with the committee. Looking at topics and talking about the next bond. I know there's been an interest from the committee about tell us, talk about the FCA, talk about how you're doing your planning, and it's all kind of coming together now. We're winding down this current bond and capturing lessons learned, but I think there's a point for us to be able to have those topics about the next bond, some more depth conversations about deferred maintenance and how we're putting that plan together. What do the options look like? And getting your feedback to me would be very valuable to all of us. A consideration, Brad, we don't have to decide tonight, but I think something in this time that we're off before we meet again is thinking about the transition. You know, the board has not made a final decision that we're going to go out for a May 2022 bond. We were targeting November. Now the talk is May. The board will make that determination in the future. If you look at our schedule, there would be 3 meetings before we actually, if we were to go on the ballot in May. And so I think those are 3 key meetings where we can have great dialogue about next bond topics and having your input. And, you know, we value your input. We appreciate everything that you give to us. And so I think that would be helpful to us. So again, not a decision tonight, but something, Brad, that if I could ask you to talk to the group during the break before the next meeting in January to kind of get some of those thoughts. Another thing I'd like to float as an idea would be consideration for the transition. If we were to get a bond in May, everybody in the committee currently, your term expires in June of 2022. There's a great just energy right now in just getting your support. So able to transition to the next bond, keeping this committee maybe extended to 2023, and then looking at maybe doing a full type of going out for new members, something to think about. And I think that would just be a great value to the district to kind of keep some of that continuity, get us through the transition of this bond and into the next bond. So just some ideas to think about, Brad, and we can talk more offline if you'd like, but again, no decisions, just something I don't want to throw out there.
I think that makes sense. I mean, being on the cusp of all the new activity, I think, you know, you mentioned making use of the committee. I think that we're here to support the district and make sure that we're able to, you know, provide feedback too. So if there are a list of topics that best, you know, suit the facilities team at the district, I think, you know, pass those over and we'll chew on those. But I think that's a great idea to really kind of focus on that for the next 2-3 meetings for you.
Great, thank you. And again, we can have some more discussions about that at a later time. And in looking at school board meeting is the next one's November 15th. Brad, we have you on the agenda for that, for your quarterly report to the board. And so we will give you some more dates about when the report will be due for that.
Great. And sorry, the date for that again was just, I didn't hear that.
November 15th, Monday.
Got it.
How are you going to get the thing prepared and reviewed and to the board, what, a week early? I mean, that's less than 3 weeks, right?
I owe Aaron a draft of that this Friday. And then after that, I'm going to pass that back to the team too. So the advisory committee on that.
Okay. Sounds like you're going to need pretty quick turnaround on everybody's part.
That's correct. You know, luckily we haven't had a busy cycle, so I think that, you know, most of what we're going to be speaking to is it won't be novel. It'll be pretty well worn.
And Brad, our deliverable to the front office is not till November 10th. So there's some time if you wanted to get it to the committee first and then get it to us. Just something to consider.
Yeah, I think you've got time for the committee to have at least a week to review.
Hey, one other side comment on that, at least for the past 2, maybe 3 years, we have not been doing quarterly reports. I can't remember if we ended up doing them about every 6 months, I think, because they're really, we were winding down, and I believe that was an agreement with the board that level.
Dick, you're absolutely right. That is correct. I would also add in there the last 18 months of COVID added a whole variety of other scenarios to us. But the board certainly understood. We also changed the frequency of meetings because we used to have monthly meetings, and the board made that adjustment as well. So it may be something we take a look at as we ramp up for the next bond. But I also believe we've got some good reporting tools to the bond committee to be able to stay in tune and up to date with projects and what's happening. So.
Okay, any other questions or topic ideas?
The main thing I guess that just kind of comes to mind in speaking to, you know, potential gearing up for the new bond really would be those kind of guiding principles that would kind of be the underpinnings for that. I think that there's a good opportunity to really kind of build upon what we had last time and really give some feedback on what those guiding principles would be. And then from a public perspective, that's one thing that comes to mind.
Great, thank you, Brad. That's something that we can definitely talk to and look at as we get back together. You know, in timing wise too, you know, the board makes a decision to go out in May. The community outreach will start in the new year. I mean, it'll ramp up very quickly, and so you know that meeting in January would be a good time to, you know, start look at that and talk about that. So from a topic perspective, having maybe that as part of our presentation to you.
And Josh, and along those lines, I don't know if it would be helpful to the committee, but we've already started the communications planning for the bond, assuming that it's happening because we don't have much time, so we have to assume that it is. But if it would be helpful for you all to see what our communications approach is going to be and how we're reaching out to the community and trying to educate people about what's going to be included in the bond, we can certainly share that as well.
Yep, Shelley, you're tagged for the agenda for next one, so thank you.
Will do.
Imagine that, Shelley's planning ahead.
It's either that or drown.
No, you're always planning, I tell you. It's awesome. All right, great to see everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone, have a great night. Thank you.
We are adjourned.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.